Very good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Louise Minchin.
Headlines for you on this Monday morning. International outrage as Belarus diverts a Ryanair plane, forces it to land and arrests an opposition activist.
New support to follow rules on COVID testing and isolation. A trial is launched in areas of England with high infection rates.
Good morning. Did business strike it lucky this weekend? The first since many restrictions were lifted on hospitality firms. So I'm in York this morning to find out how they got on.
Brilliant. In his own words, exceptionally awesome. Phil Mickelson becomes the oldest man to win a major. He claimed the US PGA Championship and a sixth major title after an extraordinary few days of golf. Also this morning,
we might get knocked down, but we'll get up again. And every day is the fight against the MD.
brutal, honest and brave. I catch up with Rob Burrow, Doddy Weir and Stephen Darby as they battle to raise awareness of this debilitating disease.
Good morning. Today across England and Wales, once again, we're looking at blustery, heavy, thundery showers, some sunshine in between. We've also got rain across central and northern Scotland. That will slip south into Northern Ireland and Northern England through the course of the day. I'll have all the details coming up later in the programme.
Good morning, it's Monday, it's the 24th of May and flights over Belarus could be suspended after a Ryanair plane was forced to land there so that a dissident journalist on board could be detained.
The plane was en route from Greece to Lithuania when its crew was ordered to land at Minsk and escorted down by a Belarusian fighter jet.
EU leaders will meet in Brussels to discuss a response to the incident, which was described as outlandish by the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale has more.
This is not where flight FR 4978 was supposed to be, on the ground at Minsk airport. The Ryanair flight, with about 170 people on board, left Athens this morning bound for Vilnius. But just before the aircraft entered Lithuanian airspace, it suddenly headed east. According to Ryanair, the crew were warned of a potential security threat and ordered to land at Minsk. For good measure, a Belarusian warplane armed to the teeth was dispatched to escort the aircraft in. But no bombs were found on board. Instead, this man was taken off the plane and arrested. Roman Protasevich is a well-known Belarusian opposition journalist and is wanted by the authorities for organising protests last year. According to the Belarus state news agency, the operation was ordered personally by the country's authoritarian president, Alexander Lukashenko, who's faced growing opposition since disputed elections last year. Belarus's exiled opposition leader said Mr. Protasevich's life was in danger.
Lukashenko personally caused an international scandal, used military aircraft against civilians of Belarus and European countries to arrest a single person. No one else is safe. Anyone can be in Roman Protasevich's place.
After several hours on the ground, the plane and remaining passengers were allowed to leave and arrive in Vilnius as outrage spread across Europe, with several countries accusing Belarus of an act of state terrorism. In a tweet, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he was coordinating with allies and warned this outlandish action by Lukashenko will have serious implications. At Vilnius airport, supporters of Mr. Protasevich waited in vain for his arrival as they contemplated just how far President Lukashenko will go to suppress opposition.
They just take him, but with no violence. He didn't look scared or something like that.
EU leaders will meet to discuss what price he should pay. James Landale, BBC News.
People who live in overcrowded homes in England will be offered alternative accommodation if they need to self-isolate in a bid to bring down COVID infection rates.
This is part of a pilot scheme being trialled in 9 areas, which comes as the latest figures show 60 million doses of the coronavirus vaccines have now been administered right across the UK. Charlotte Wright has the details.
For many, life is returning to normal. But with concerns that the new COVID variant from India spreads more quickly, experts say there's a greater chance that infections will rise as restrictions ease. So the government is trialling new schemes to encourage people to get tested and self-isolate if necessary to help curb the spread. 9 areas with high infection rates in England will receive a share of £11.9 million, including parts of London, the North West, Yorkshire, Peterborough and Somerset. They'll trial increased social care support for vulnerable adults and translation assistance for non-English speakers, while those isolating in overcrowded houses will be offered alternative accommodation. Labour has previously called for more financial support to compensate people for lost earnings while isolating. Meanwhile, the government is continuing to urge people to get vaccinated, as new research shows they are effective at reducing the chances of getting infected from the Indian variant. But while more than 60 million doses have now been administered across the UK, there are concerns that in some areas, take-up is still too low. Blackburn with Darwin has one of the highest COVID rates in England. So this week, a vaccine bus, like this one in Bolton, will visit venues including mosques, colleges and leisure centres there to make getting the jab more convenient. At the moment, infection levels across the UK are still relatively low, but the authorities are urging the public to remain cautious to avoid another lockdown. Charlotte Wright, BBC News.
We're joined now by our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming, who joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Adam. So some positive vaccine news over the weekend and for today as well. But this really is a huge week in Westminster, isn't it, with the former political advisor, Dominic Cummings, is giving evidence to MPs later this week. So what can we expect from that?
Yeah, that will happen on Wednesday morning, and everyone in Westminster will be tuning in because Dominic Cummings is a really interesting person who was there for all the big decisions. And whether you think that he's a hero or whether you think he's a bit of a villain because he went to Barnard Castle during the middle of the lockdown when we were all told we weren't meant to be travelling, it's still definitely going to be interesting to hear what he's got to say. Now, he was there for lots of the big decisions, so he's got lots of information, and he says he's got documents and screenshots of messages and things, so we'll get some insight into what was happening behind the scenes. It also sounds like he's got a bit of an axe to grind because he's been doing a very long thread on Twitter where he lays into the government for some big mistakes, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic and its overall strategy and just how much it wanted to clamp down on the virus or otherwise at the beginning, and just how prepared it was for dealing with an issue like this. And also, he's got a habit for coining a very vivid phrase. The last time he was at a parliamentary committee, he talked about the procurement of PPE in the Department of Health and how the department was left as a smoking ruin by the end of it. So he can say stuff that gets our attention. Now, I think what the government will be preparing to rebut a lot of this with their own facts, their own evidence, and the fact that they were dealing with an unfolding, unprecedented situation with incomplete data. And also, the government will say that they're also holding their own inquiry into all of this, led by a senior figure that will consider evidence probably over months and years, rather than just one very dramatic session in the House of Commons.
OK, Adam, much to think about this week. Thank you very much for that. Speak to you later.
A racial equality activist is in a critical condition after being shot in the head in South London.
Sasha Johnson was a prominent figure in the Black Lives Matter movement and is now on a leadership group of a political party called Taking the Initiative, which has named her as a victim of the incident. Police say there's no evidence to suggest it was a targeted attack.
14 people, including a child, have died in a cable car accident in northern Italy. The car was transporting passengers over the Motoroni mountain in the Piedmont region when it fell. It had only recently reopened after coronavirus restrictions were eased.
Marches and vigils have been taking place in Minneapolis to mark the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. Tomorrow will be a year to the day since the 46-year-old was killed by a white police officer, sparking global protests. Some of Mr. Floyd's relatives addressed the crowds.
I will stand and be the voice for him. I will stand and be the change for him. I will stand and continue to be the legacy for him.
Now, the lead singer of the Italian band which won the Eurovision Song Contest over the weekend will undergo a drug test this morning after footage from the event prompted speculation that he may have been taking illegal substances.
Måneskin frontman Damiano David will take the test after arriving home. He strongly denies any wrongdoing. Let's get the latest now from our correspondent Anna Holligan. Morning to you, and I suppose not in some ways the headlines that Eurovision would like to see.
Precisely. These are the glam rockers rocking Eurovision, just as the event was being celebrated as being a success for actually happening during the pandemic. So this speculation started after television pictures showed Damiano David basically dipping his head to the table for a few seconds. And we spoke to the band before their performance, their winning performance, and then afterwards during the press conference, he was there and he explained for himself. He said the guitarist Thomas had broken a glass and he was dipping down to clear it up. Eurovision, we spoke to right afterwards as well. They said they were carefully studying the footage. They'd conducted a site visit, so inside the green room, and they confirmed that there was broken glass there. But the band themselves volunteered to have this test because they said they had absolutely nothing to hide. And they also went on Instagram a little later and they posted a note saying they were anti-drugs, never used cocaine, and would be tested because they had nothing to hide.
OK, Anna, thank you very much for that update. And just to let you know, actually, we will be talking to the band themselves at around 10 to 8 this morning.
Yeah, do let us know what you think about that. I know there's about 8 million odd people watching Eurovision at the weekend. So, yeah, it was good fun. And we will also be talking about poor old James Newman from the UK, who I think took his nil point rather well.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
11 minutes past 6. Historic treasures valued at more than £1 million have been stolen during a break-in at Arundel Castle in West Sussex.
Among the items taken is a set of gold rosary beads carried by Mary Queen of Scots to her execution in 1587. The burglary actually happened on Friday night. A spokesman for the castle said the pieces were of priceless importance.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.